This is Financially Fit Radio with Cory Sickles from Safe Harbor Retirement Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Cory provides his clients and prospects with the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful solutions to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now, here is Financially Fit Radio with Cory Sickles.
Welcome back to another episode of Financially Fit Radio. I'm Cory Sickles with Safe Harbor Retirement Group and Wealth Advisors. If you'd like any information about what we discussed today, feel free to give us a call at 614-760-0670, or feel free to visit our website at safeharboroh.com. And while you're on our website, feel free to click on that radio page. You can listen to some past episodes, as well as subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, or Spotify. Also, feel free to watch today's show on our YouTube channel. Just type in Safe Harbor Retirement Group. We have a playlist called Financially Fit Radio. Feel free to watch other episodes that we've done this year, as well as subscribe. And you can also keep up to date with our shorts that we're putting out, about 3 or 4 topics a week about different types of financial topics. Today, we're going to talk about possibly losing a spouse and what can you really do to prepare for it. I think it'll be an interesting conversation. It's probably a conversation that many of you out there probably don't want to have with your spouse, but in reality, it's something that probably needs to take place sooner rather than later. But before we dive into that topic, let me introduce to you my co-host this week and every week, and that's Tony Shore. Tony, how are you today?
I am doing great, Cory. I had a great weekend last weekend. I went to the fair with my family, and we got to see all the animals and walk around the fair and do some people watching and eat really healthy. When you go to the fair, Cory, I'm being
really
sarcastic.
I understand. What's your favorite besides pizza? What's your favorite thing there?
At the
elephant
fair,
ears?
no, cheese curds.
Cheese curds.
Yeah, they have really good cheese curds at the fair, the best. That's probably my favorite, but there's a lot to choose from there, I'll tell you that. And with the advent of all these different specialized food trucks, I usually get the large handmade lemonade and some cheese curds, and we walk around and look at all the 4-H projects and animals, and it's fun. It's fun. And my daughter and her boyfriend were with us, and they had no idea what a tractor pull was. And I said, "You've never been to a tractor pull?" And in the Midwest, they're pretty popular. Sure. My dad used to take me as a kid, and I grew up on a farm. So I had to try to explain. They thought it was like these big strong men pulling tractors, like hooked on a rope, like people pulling tractors. And I'm like, no, it's tractors that are souped up to pull these big heavy weights. And they said, "And that's fun?" And I go, "For some people."
Right. We were just talking before, and I did kind of Google it, but yeah, you guys average about 1.8 million people at your fair, which makes you the second largest in Minnesota.
Yeah. And
second largest in the U.S.
Yeah, and one of the only reasons we're second and not first, Cory, and we would be first, but the Texas State Fair lasts longer, and it is a slightly bigger area, so it can, but it lasts longer. It's 2 weeks instead of a week and a half. So really, we have set the per day record, I believe, the single day record for a state fair attendance or fair attendance in the U.S. So, but yeah, it's huge. Of course, they do everything bigger in Texas. We all know that. Yeah.
Plus, that made me think about where Ohio ranks. Ohio ranks actually 8th.
Oh, really? You guys have a pretty big state fair then, too.
A little over 1 million people.
Wow.
And then for some reason, I think ours is only about a week and a half long, too.
Yeah.
I thought
most are.
Yeah.
Most are. Texas, they just have to,
Yeah. Yep. You got to make sure they're number one.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they found a way, but that's good. I've heard impressive things about the Texas State Fair. I think it's on a little bigger area too than ours. But at any rate, it's that kind of season. And I mean, how far are we away from pro football? I mean, Cory, preseason games start here pretty soon.
They do. Yeah.
We're probably in it. We're in it right now as
Yeah,
the airing of
exactly.
the show. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, come September, college and football, college and NFL is going to be taking place. So
yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So today's topic, you've got, I mean, it's a heavy one. Preparing for the loss of a spouse is tough. And I think it's good. We're going to talk about what you need to do to prepare as a couple for the loss of a spouse.
Yeah, obviously it's something that I guess, Tony, many times it's unexpected. I mean, there are instances where it is expected,
Right?
But it's unexpected, and I've seen, being an advisor here for a number of years, I've seen all kinds of age ranges pass away. Some have everything in place, some don't, right? So it's a difficult situation. And a lot of times it's a more difficult situation, for the remaining spouse, right? Because in some cases, if you haven't planned the correct way, you're losing income. And that can have a big impact on your lifestyle and things like that if you haven't planned properly. And depending on your situation, on how you had everything done, are you going to be dealing with probate, not probate, those type of issues as well. And then you have all the family matters. You see so many families anymore, Tony, that they're blended, right? And so you're dealing with that situation as well. So I always think that we're going to talk about a lot of different things today, but I always think it's best to do all this stuff that we're going to talk about while you're healthy, while you're sharp, and while you can still communicate with the loved ones on how you want things to go as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think you don't want to leave your loved ones in a bad situation. I've said that on the show a lot when we're talking about either estate planning or preparing for the loss of a spouse. And so you want that remaining spouse to be in a good situation. And unfortunately, the majority of the time, it's the wife. The women tend to live longer, and quite a bit longer than men statistically. Now, it can happen the other way around, but the majority of the time it doesn't. The majority of the time it's the woman. So there's a lot to that, but you have to evaluate where you're at, right? I mean, that's the start of it. Where are we at, and where do we need to be prepared?
That's exactly right. And really what you're talking about, Tony, is you need to be able to basically put together an inventory of all your assets and all your liabilities first. Right. And some of that anymore is also making sure that you have your usernames and passwords. So if something happens, your spouse has access to all your information, and vice versa. Your 401ks, your bank accounts, whatever you might end up having, but you need to be able to have a list of all those assets and liabilities. And the other part of it is you also now need to start looking at, where is all of our income coming from, to make sure that you understand that as well. Right now, obviously that can be a lot of information. And one of the things that we do with our clients or prospects as we kind of go through our process is, obviously the first time you come in, we're going to ask you a lot of questions. Where you're going to have to answer a lot of that, right? You're going to have to tell us what assets you have. You're going to bring statements in, all that type of information. We're going to be able to review your income, because that's how we're eventually going to start building the plan. Mm-hmm. But the nice part of it is you're going to do this one time. And now what are you going to have to do is now you have to store all this information somewhere, right?
Right.
So one of the things that we have for our clients is we have what we call our generational vault, where you can actually upload all this information, and you can, at any point in time, you can add to it. delete it, modify it, so you can keep adding statements to it. So really it becomes that centralized location where you have access to all your financial information. And in some cases, and many times, Tony, we can even sync that up. So you can log in and find out, how did I do today, in the market, right? Or how did I do for the quarter, or whatever you want to be able to look at. But we have the ability for also to put that in, all those financial things in there, and have it link up where you can actually see that on a daily basis as well. So you get an a real-time view of what your true net worth is as well.
Yeah. That's important to know where you're at, and look at those assets and liabilities, like you said, and review where your income is coming from and what income is going to be there should one of you pass away. What's going to be left for income? Because some of the income goes away when one spouse dies, right?
That's a,
It might be a pension, it might be obviously so. You're going to lose one or the other of the Social Security. You're going to lose the lower of the two amounts, but you're still going to lose it.
Yeah, so that's a good example of that too. Is when you start put together that income, where all the income's coming from, Tony. You also kind of want to look at is, will that income be there if I pass away or if my spouse passes away too,
Right.
right? Because in some cases you might receive a pension. Maybe you're actually receiving a single life, which means it ends when you're done. Or, did you set it up as a joint, or potentially is the spouse getting 50% of what you were receiving and vice versa? So there's a lot of different things that you need to make sure that both of you understand that if something happens to one another, what kind of impact that is going to have on your overall income.
Right. That is really key. So, evaluate your current situation. What's the next step?
Well, we kind of just talked about those survivor benefits. One could be a pension, but obviously we know that if both of you are on Social Security, you're going to be losing one of those. Now you're going to get the highest one that's remaining, but you're going to lose that other Social Security check.
Sure.
Which means your income is going to definitely be down. And if you still need to be able to, you still need that income, because in most cases, people don't want to change lifestyles.
Right.
Where's that income going to come from? And that's where planning comes in, to be able to fill that potential income gap, if you or your spouse do pass away, because it's going to have to come from your assets. So you got to be able to have a plan in place to be able to, potentially activate some type of portfolio at that point in time as well.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. So, look at your financial situation, including your survivor benefits. You got to look at those. And you mentioned Social Security and pensions. Those are both huge, and you have to understand, will they be there? How much will be there?
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the other part of all this, Tony, too, is obviously when you're kind of going through this process, you can review your debt as well. Right.
Yes.
So are you in a position to be able to get rid of some of that debt as quickly as possible? Because, again, you want to make it easier for that remaining spouse. If you can possibly pay that house off or whatever that is, you need to be able to have a plan. And you definitely don't want to have credit card debts going into, if something like that happens.
Right.
So, you need to be able to address that and, all those type of things. But at the end of the day, you have to have a good hold of what your budget is going to look like. And, do you have an emergency fund? Something happens to your spouse, for example, and it might not be something where it happens instantly. It could be something that actually takes them 4 to 6 to 8 weeks to possibly pass away, which means you might not be working as much, right? Depending on your situation, which means now you need to make sure you have maybe some type of emergency fund to be able to help you during that time. And that's what an emergency fund's truly for, an emergency, right? And if you're going to be taking care of your spouse because of something happened, you want to make sure that you can pay for things. The last thing you want to be able to do is worry financially as well as emotionally at the same time.
Yeah, an emergency fund is important, and it's something that not enough people have built up. How much do you recommend people have in an emergency fund?
Well, in reality, in an ideal situation, you want about 6 months of whatever your monthly expenses are, right?
Right.
So, even though I would say most people don't live on a budget while they're working, especially, it's a little different once you retire, but you still need to have a good idea of what is your monthly budget.
Right.
So you can actually have an emergency fund to be able to take care of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Again, it comes back to understanding where you are and creating a budget. The B word, I know it's a dirty word, but you can call it a spending plan, whatever. But again, it's knowing where you're at. That's kind of where you started. You got to know what you've got and where you're at.
Yeah, and this is a great time to really look at your insurance needs too, Tony, right? And
Okay.
really what I'm talking about, there's two parts to this. One is life insurance and one's health insurance. When you're young or younger, I would recommend everyone go out and get a term life insurance
Mm-hmm.
and have maybe another one that's maybe a little bit more permanent for later on. But you can get term life insurance pretty cheap. And if something does happen, you can get a $500 million policy that's going to help your spouse if something unexpectedly does happen.
Sure.
And it needs to go both ways too, right? Just maybe one spouse is working, the other one's not. You still want to make sure you have life insurance both ways to be able to just handle the financial burden that comes with that. And obviously health insurance is a big one as well. If your health insurance is on that other spouse, what happens if they pass away? Do you have the option to go get it where you work, or are you going to have to go out on the exchange to get it? Or, you just need to be able to make sure you can answer those questions, because that healthcare is a big part of all this.
It's huge.
Yeah. And, especially if something happens before you're 65, Medicare is not there for you. So you got to be able to fill that gap with the health insurance as well. But, one of the best things that you really can do is, as you kind of go through a process of working with an advisor or building that financial plan, we're going to be able to assess some of that stuff to make sure that you do have enough insurance in case something does happen. We all hate paying for it, right?
Right.
It's kind of like paying taxes.
Right. Nobody likes paying for health
because
insurance.
you never think your day is going to come where you're going to cash in that policy.
Yeah, or life insurance. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But when it does happen, believe me, it's a lifesaver for the remaining spouse. I've seen it too many times.
Yeah.
And I've seen it the other way, where they don't think they need it, and then they wish they did have it, because you're going to be able to be in a situation where they can pay off the debt, pay off, they got to pay for your funeral. There's things that you have to be able to do. And the more things that you can pay off with that life insurance policy, you're going to be in a better situation. You want to make sure, maybe you have kids. You want to make sure your kids still go to college. That costs money, especially you see some of the numbers of what college costs today. So you want to make sure that you have something that's going to be able to protect, your spouse and your kids and your family if something does unexpectedly happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And you want to make sure that, again, you're leaving your spouse and your loved ones in a good situation. And life insurance is a great way to do that. And there are so many other benefits that come along with it nowadays. They've really improved these policies so much.
They have. There's a lot of different ones out there. If you work with, the right type of advisor, they'll put you in something that's in your best interest, to be able to make sure that you're taken care of and your family's taken care of as well.
Yeah.
So now let's kind of just, those are kind of like some of the big things that you need to take care of. But
sure.
let's kind of talk about some of the I think one of the most important parts of that is, and that is really to make sure that you have your legal work in order as well. Wills and trust and power of attorneys and your healthcare directives, all that type of stuff you want taken care of, right?
Yeah.
And if you have kids, you have to have this stuff taken care of.
Sure.
If something happens to you and your spouse, who's going to actually have guardianship over your kids? You need to outline that. If not, I've seen so many times where now you have grandparents and siblings fighting about who's going to be able to take care of, of the kids.
Yeah.
So put it all down in writing. It doesn't take that long to do. With our clients, it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, the whole process. You meet with the attorney, they put together the legal work, and then you come in and you sign all the stuff to get it all in order.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a process. It's only a couple hours of your time to really take care of it. But it's so important to make sure that if you can't manage your finances, that you have it so someone can.
Right.
If you want a living will, you need to make sure you have that in place. Um, so it's it's just a good situation to be able to make sure that you have all your legal stuff. And again, once you have all this stuff done, completed, you can upload this into our generational vault too, and give access to that to your kids or whoever your executor or trustee is, so they have access to all those documents in case they do need them when the time does come. And eventually it will come. It just depends on when.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna happen. Yeah, and the likelihood is, you or your spouse will die sooner, and than the other, and so then you don't want to leave your spouse in a bad situation either, and that's another reason to have your trusts and your wills in place, not just for the kids, but for your spouse as well. That is hugely important, and estate planning is a big part of it. And I know that that's something that you help your clients with as well, and work alongside the estate planning attorney that you work with
Exactly.
to make sure that they have everything set. My wife and I have done that, and it's a relief.
Yeah, it is. It is a total relief. And the one thing I'll say, Tony, is once you've done all this stuff and you checked all your accounts and all your beneficiaries are correct, and you set up your will and you set up your trust, the next step really now is now you need to communicate that with your family.
Yeah.
Don't leave them in the dark. I,
Yeah.
I mean, I know you've kind of maybe have seen this. I've
Yep.
definitely have seen it where kids get blindsided about the way things are going to actually be sent over or given to the heirs,
Yep.
and it creates now you have a big tension among family, and I've seen it where siblings don't talk together or
I've seen
don't
it
talk to
too.
one another after someone passes.
Yeah, my it happened in my family, my father's family. Him and his siblings were tight and got together all the time, and very very loving family. Everybody got along and loved each other. And then Grandpa passed away, and his fork, he did not properly communicate with all of them, and they all had different ideas on what was going to happen. And now a couple of them aren't speaking to each other, and it's so sad to see. And you can easily create family disharmony by not communicating and having all the ducks in a row as far as your estate plan. And people think, oh, it's not just for the ultra wealthy, it's for everybody. Needs a plan in place for what happens when
Exactly
they
right.
pass. And you have to communicate it with all of your children and your spouse. Sit down in a room together, work with a financial professional like yourself, so everybody knows where they can go for answers on the finances, and everybody's on the same page as who's going to handle what. And that's the key.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Communication is always the key, right? In any business that you do or
Hmm.
any dealings that you have with people, you need to be able to make sure you communicate. And here's the other part that we'll kind of end the show with is, so now you got all this stuff in place, right? You're working with an advisor. Why do you think we have annual meetings? We have annual meetings not only to review your portfolio, but also to make sure that everything is still the way it needs to be. Things
Right.
change, people
Yep.
pass away. You want to make sure that all this stuff is updated at least on an annual basis, so it's always up to date. And I always hear one of the well, I'm not sure the way I want things to how I want them to go and all that type of stuff. You know what? You can always change it. Get it in place today, and then you're going to be able to feel a lot better. I can't tell you how many times, Tony, someone's come up to me, say, "Hey, I'm going on. I'm going to Mexico or some other place in about 3 weeks. I need to get my will in place." You know what I mean? They'll say stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And in reality, you need to just be able to get it done now because we're always
Yeah.
traveling. It's
Yeah.
just as easy to pass away down in Mexico or wherever you're traveling to as it is driving to work.
Yeah.
So anyway, take care of all that type of stuff. You can always schedule a complimentary, no obligation meeting with us. Again, our phone number is 614-760-0670. You can always visit our website at safeharboroh.com. Remember, we're a fiduciary. We're always going to be looking out in your best interest. Our main goal is to make sure that you have a plan, and we'll help you put that together.
Yeah, that's hugely important. Well, Cory, great show today. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Financially Fit Radio with our host, Cory Sickles. Thank you for listening to Financially Fit Radio. Don't pay too much for taxes or retire without a sound income plan. For more information, contact Cory Sickles at Safe Harbor Retirement Group. Call 614-760-0670 or visit their website at financiallyfitoh.com.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.